So Girahim was indeed successful in reviving Demise. He brought back Zelda to the past, after we'd successfully sealed him away in the present, was able to drain her power into the imprisoned, and he's now waiting for us at the opposite end of this portal. Hello guys, this is UniversalGiant, and welcome to the finale of Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. This is normally the time when I'd recount all of the plot story events that we've gone through to reach this point. But honestly, all we've been doing is following Fi's advice and chasing after Zelda the entire game. And even Zelda, when she revealed herself as the goddess Hylia incarnate, told us that we were simply being used to follow along with the destiny that was laid out for us thousands of years before we were even conceived. So it's difficult to put into words exactly what our motivation is here. I mean, we know that the world is probably going to come to an end or something, but at least in all of the other Zelda games we can actually see the consequences. All of the things that the antagonist would do to the world to damage and destroy it were we not to deal with him. Like in Ocarina of Time, you live through the destruction that Ganondorf rains down on Hyrule. In The Wind Waker, you see the results of the war that Ganon had with the others in the world, how it... I'm not going to spoil it if anyone hasn't seen Wind Waker, but suffice it to say, you know what the repercussions are of your actions. And in Twilight Princess, you're fighting to lift that darkness from the world. But in Skyward Sword, the most you get out of the imprisoned is, "Oh, you got out again! Silly imprisoned, get back in your cage." You don't see anything that he's capable of. You don't know what evil things he will do, what he will do to take over the world, all the people he'll kill. You don't see any of that. So it kind of makes it difficult to relate and fully understand what it is you're trying to seal away here. I mean, we're told what we're supposed to do, but that's been this case throughout the entire game. It just feels a little bit shallow. But nonetheless, we know what's at stake. And just like in Link to the Past, before the very final battle, you're given the option of backing out, even returning back to the present time, restocking on anything you need, healing up, saving, anything that you want to do, you are free to do now. But once you step through this portal, you cannot leave. Thank you, Fi. I think we're gonna need it. Beautiful place, isn't it? Nice to know you have some sense of dignity. And beauty. As evil as you probably are.
Oh, so you've decided to meet your end in battle after all. It pleases me greatly to see such misplaced valor, human. Take a moment to appreciate your surroundings, for where we stand shall serve as your tomb for eternity. The hate for the gods that has boiled in my veins. Your will taste all of it in the bite of my blade. The only question left is how long you will manage to remain standing before I take your life. Try to keep it interesting for me, would you? And when you do fall, know that your world and everything in it is mine to dominate, mine to subjugate, mine to rule. When I finish with you, You can take solace in knowing your friends and kin will soon follow, as I wipe all who oppose me from the face of this world. It won't be long now. At last, the almighty power I've sought for millennia. I will take the Triforce for my own. And the world shall be under my foot for eternity.
So we enter a battle with Demise. Sword for sword, one-on-one. And there is a particular strategy you can do to make this go a little bit faster. I will try to do it if I can, but the easiest way to get an opening is to initiate him to do an attack of his own. And you just recount with your own attack. And if you're able to get a decent combo on him after you get him to relent from one of his own attacks, then you would be able to get a decent combo on him. Sometimes I can do it, other times I can't. But if you're able to knock him down like that, you can get a decent number of hits in on him. And that makes the first phase go incredibly easy. But the second phase takes a little bit more patience. Again, when I first played this, I would try doing this whole fight without a shield, and by God is it a difficult fight without a shield. But you need to get him, or the easiest way to defeat him, is to get him to open up his defenses when he's trying to charge a strike to get his lightning sword. Fi will tell you at some points during this fight that you can't necessarily charge your Skyward strike in here. It's not going to work, because you're not in the goddess's realm anymore. And that makes it easy for you to think that it's impossible for you to use it at all. But you actually can. And that's the key to doing this fight fairly well. That's the one thing that held me up when I first tried playing this. Because I didn't even think it a possibility, because you're told you can't even do it. You can squeeze a couple of hits in if you try, and I'm obviously not doing well. But here it's just a game of patience, mostly. You're waiting for him to get rid of the attack. You could probably initiate it somehow. But try to get as many hits in on him as you can. And if you're able to strike him before he's able to get his sword charged, then that gives you an opening. But he's probably going to hit me. So chances are, if I can get my potion... I usually need at least one potion to get through this fight. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I haven't practiced it all that much. But of course, it's incredibly difficult for you to get an attack on him if he has his sword charged. The idea is you want to get enough hits in on him that you can actually steal a lightning strike from him. Stun him with it, knock him over, I have to tell you, you can do that fight in under 20 seconds if you're good enough. But when you first play this game, holy hell is it difficult.
Extraordinary. You stand as a paragon of your kind, human. You fight like no man or demon I have ever known, though this is not the end. My hate never perishes. It is born anew in a cycle with no end. I will rise again. Those like you, those who share the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, they are eternally bound to this curse. An incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind, dooming them to wander a blood-soaked sea of darkness for all time.
So that's it. Past and present, demise is sealed away. Giant, thank you. I think it's over. Finally, it's all over. Nice going, you two. You guys were totally amazing in this little adventure I like to call The Legend of Groose. That was a little joke. Oh, you. Joke or not, your contributions to our efforts were heroic. You have my thanks. Oh, well, you know, just glad I could make myself useful. I'm happy things turned out okay. Hey, so things look pretty sewn up here. What do you say, guys? Ready to head back to our own time? Granny was really worried about you two. We don't want to keep the old girl in suspense too long. You got a point. Hylia, Your Grace. Or perhaps you prefer Zelda. It pleases me to know you are safe. Master, I must speak with you. Master Giant, you have successfully protected the goddess reborn and defeated demise, fulfilling your role as the hero of legend. My purpose here is complete. Therefore, I ask you to dissolve our arrangement as master and servant. Drive the sword into the pedestal before you, and I will return to the sword and enter a sleep without end. Master, you have achieved the purpose you were chosen to fulfill. Please, set the sword on the pedestal, and bring the goddess's mission to an end. Now, Master, it is time to conclude our necessary companionship. Giant. Giant, hear me. My purpose was to obey the command of the goddess and lead you, the chosen hero of this land, on your quest. When I first awoke and began this task, I perceived it as merely serving my function as a servant to her grace. However, I have come to consider the information corresponding to our time together among the most precious data I have on record. I do not have the capability to fully understand the human spirit, Giant. But now, at the end of my journey with you, as I prepare to sleep within the Master Sword forever, I experience a feeling I am unable to identify. I lack sufficient data to be sure of my conclusion, but I believe this feeling correlates closest to what you people call happiness. Our partnership is at an end, and even as we speak, I feel my consciousness fading away. Before I enter the sleep that calls me to the sword, I wish to relate to you words that I've recorded many times over the course of our journey. Many have said them to you thus far, but I now wish to say them for myself. Thank you, Master. May we meet again in another life. What, Impa? Why? Come with us! Zelda, Your Grace, you possess the memories of the goddess. You must understand why that is not possible. I am a being of this age. My place is here. I know that, but... You must return to your own time. I will take care of the gate once you have passed through. I can't do that. You and I have been through so much together. I don't want to leave you alone. Please, Impa, come back with us. Zelda, at the command of the goddess, I passed through the gate of time. I did so to protect you and aid the fight to prevent the world's destruction. The last remnants of Demise are decaying slowly within the sword. Someone must stay behind to watch over this blade. His spirit must not reawaken. He must never be allowed to threaten the world again. This is the nature of the task given to my tribe. As a member of the Sheikah, as the goddess's chosen guardians, I gladly welcome this duty. Zelda, I shall watch over the Triforce. Its power is too great to leave in the grasp of man. Dependence on its might is an invitation to disaster. When it has served its purpose, it must be secreted away to lie dormant once again, the knowledge of its existence hidden from mortal history. These are the words the goddess said to me long ago. I'm sure you remember them well, as do you. Do not despair, Zelda. You and I will surely meet again someday. See? I told you we'd meet again. Impa, thank you. Thank you for everything. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Controversial piece of work. One that's given me plenty of fits through playing, and one that I can put in the same category as Mario Sunshine with, it was interesting to play again, but I really don't have an interest in doing it anymore after this. It's a game that I respect for a lot of things did differently. The motion controls, when they worked, were phenomenal. I've never felt more immersed in the world of a Zelda game and actually playing through the actions of what you're doing, as opposed to just pressing the B button to do sword attacks. You have a lot of interesting mechanics that the motion controls brought. I just think that they were introduced in a lot of different places that they didn't necessarily have to be, that they were shoehorned into certain mechanics that weren't necessary, and that they didn't always work in the way that you wanted them to. Now, that could just be because of the way I was playing, and I don't fully understand all of the little nuances that are in the controls, but it's something that you don't pick up unless you're explicitly looking for them or have somebody tell you, and that's not really the way you want to teach controls. But that said, we do have in the background here an untold story that Zelda had her own quest to go on throughout this, one we didn't understand until after we spoke with her as Hylia. That she had her own journey to go on, to relearn what her past life was. So she would go from temple to temple across the surface, praying at each of the individual temples to learn what her identity was. And I think it's really fascinating that Link isn't the only one that had to go through an adventure. Just because we didn't get to see Zelda's side of it until now in the credits, doesn't mean she didn't have her own trials to go through. So it's interesting in that we're not alone on this adventure, even though it may have felt that way, that we were only going through all of what we had to experience just to save Zelda. Zelda had her own adventure to go on. And she had her own helper. It's not that she couldn't do it without us entirely, but she didn't need our help for everything, and I think that's a really interesting concept. But we also have a couple of loose ends that don't necessarily tie up unless you think about it, like whatever happened to Skyloft and all of the humans that were up there. Because you have to figure, eventually, and the credits will show this, a few humans do move down to the surface and repopulate the surface. But whatever happened to the people on Skyloft, not all of them go down with you. Whatever happened to the Lockwings? And one thing I like to think... You remember the city in the sky from Twilight Princess and the Uka? They didn't come out of nowhere. I don't know how they managed to morph from humans and Loftwings into Uka, but I like to think that the city in the sky is Skyloft thousands of years in the future. I have nothing to back it up because I haven't looked into it at all, but it's an interesting subject I like to think about. One other unanswered question though, what exactly is Girahim? Because we see all of these parallels in our final fight with him between Girahim and Fi. Like you have the diamond theme going on not only on his body, but in the dialogue boxes when he fully transforms. Demise pulls a sword from Girahim's body, and Girahim's spirit returns to the sword just like Fi inhabits the Master Sword. So it's all well and good, you have that yin and yang thing going, but I can understand the goddess creating the Master Sword and Fi, but where did Girahim's spirit come from? Was Demise strong enough to create his own version of the Master Sword and his own protector counterpart to Fi? Because if you think about it, Girahim's personality was opposite to Fi's in every known way. He was unpredictable. Like, Fi was cool and calculated in everything that she did, whereas Girahim was completely unpredictable and off the wall. I really enjoy Girahim's character, and I know that came through in a lot of the voice acting I pretend to do. He's one of those guys who sets himself apart from every other villain in this franchise. I guess the closest would be Vadi from the handhelds. But he is just so off the wall and unpredictable. He's like the Joker in the respect that you can never tell what's going on in his mind. Even when he tells you exactly what he's after and exactly what he wants to do, you are still scared stiff because you have no idea what he's going to do or how he's going to do it. He tries to get under your skin in a way that no other Zelda villain has. And I really appreciate that. He's probably the thing that I enjoy most about Skyward Sword outside of the motion controls when they actually do their job. I didn't know Monolith Soft was involved in the making of this game. How about that? But how exactly did Girahim come into existence? It could have been the fact that you create a dark version of whatever light thing that you do. Like, all the Zelda games have the trio of three things, power, wisdom, and courage, and everything tends to come into threes. Areas that you go to, dungeons you have to go through, all those sorts of things. And it's weird that you have that light versus dark, and there really isn't any explanation for it whatsoever. But other than that, I think the story is hyped up a bit more than it should be. The first hour and the relationship between Zelda and Link is beautiful, and I love it, but it gets old after a certain point, and it doesn't really drive you as a player, even if it drives Link as a protagonist. So I think the story is a bit overblown for what it is. You don't get to see the full repercussions of your actions, positive or negative. And one last thing I wanted to touch on, I can't seem to remember exactly what it was. I don't think, outside of the motion controls, that this game really brings all that much new to the table. You can argue Zelda games really don't have to do that because they have a set formula already that works fairly well. I just don't know if the game set itself apart from the others well enough to make me want to replay it again. But we can see Zelda, Groose, and Link have all made their way back up to Skyloft. Peace is returned. We're under protection of the Triforce. What's going to happen to everybody now? All the demons have been eradicated from the surface. Actually, who am I kidding? We're back in Skyloft. Everybody's come back down to the surface. And now it's Link playing the Ballad of the Goddess for Zelda. Exactly the opposite of the scene that we had when we first played. The path between Skyloft and the surface is open. Groose and his buddies are all returning back to Skyloft to continue their lives. What's left for us to do? Should we return back to the sky? Look around us. As a child, I always dreamed of a world below. I wanted to see the surface with my own eyes, and feel the land's warm breeze on my skin. I think I want to live here. I always want to feel solid ground beneath my feet, see the clouds above my head, and watch over the Triforce. What about you, Giant? What will you do now? I'll stay here with you. What else? Our Loftlings return to the sky, free as birds. This has been UniversalGiant, and thanks for watching The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. See you next time.